Jeffrey Dahmer, infamously known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, is remembered for some of the most disturbing crimes in modern American history. Among the many chilling aspects of his actions was his attempt at what has been described as zombification experiments. These experiments were a gruesome extension of his desire for control, companionship, and the creation of what he considered the perfect, submissive partner, someone alive but entirely under his command. Dahmer's methods were horrifyingly calculated. After luring his victims, often young men and boys, back to his apartment, he would incapacitate them, usually through the use of alcohol or drugs to render them unconscious or compliant. But what set some of his crimes apart was the attempt to keep his victims alive, yet in a state where they would not resist or leave. He hoped to create living people who were, in effect, stripped of their will and autonomy. The key to these experiments was a crude and chilling form of neurosurgery. Dahmer would use a power drill to bore holes into the skulls of his victims. This was not done with any medical knowledge or precision, but rather with the sole intent of gaining access to the brain while the victim was still alive. Through these holes, Dahmer injected various substances directly into the brain tissue. His primary chemical of choice was hydrochloric acid, though in at least one instance he used boiling water. The rationale behind this was to destroy specific areas of the brain responsible for higher cognitive function and free will, while ideally keeping the basic bodily functions intact. One of the most well-known victims of these experiments was Errol Lindsay. Dahmer drugged Lindsay, then drilled a hole in his skull and injected hydrochloric acid. Lindsay regained consciousness and, remarkably, even complained of a headache and asked what Dahmer had done to him. Ultimately, Lindsay did not survive the experiment, succumbing to his injuries shortly afterward. Another tragic case was that of Conorak Synthesomphone, a 14-year-old boy. Dahmer performed a similar procedure, drilling a hole and injecting acid. In a haunting twist, Synthesomphone managed to escape the apartment while Dahmer was momentarily away, wandering into the street, injured and disoriented. Neighbors found him and police were called. However, Dahmer convinced the officers that Synthesomphone was his intoxicated adult lover, and the police, tragically, returned him to Dahmer's custody. Soon after, Synthesomphone was killed. Dahmer's goal with these experiments was not simply to kill, but to create a submissive, permanent companion, someone who would not abandon him, resist, or betray him. He described wanting a partner that was completely compliant without needing to be conscious. His attempts, however, were deeply misguided, rooted in a profound misunderstanding of biology, and driven by dark, compulsive fantasies. The injections caused catastrophic brain damage, leading only to pain, incapacitation, and death. The sheer brutality and cold calculation of these acts shocked investigators and the public alike. Dahmer's zombification experiments stand as a chilling example of his desire for mastery over others and his utter disregard for human life and dignity. The suffering endured by his victims is a grim reminder of the depths of his crimes. If you found this exploration of one of true crime's most notorious figures informative, don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth looks at criminal psychology and history. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts or suggest topics you'd like us to cover next.